Greetings, everybody. It's Jim. Out of the woodwork comes a product that really got me excited when I seen it. They had no idea it was coming by, but I'm sure as heck glad it's existing. As you can tell, I got my Fantasy Trip t-shirt on today, so we're in for some good RPG goodness. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about why you should be using Heroic Expeditions Volume 1 from Imaginary Media. So when Hexagram comes out, we all get excited, right? Because it wets the whistle, it gets us going to look forward to getting the game on the table. It reminds us of how great of a game it is. And as a marketer, I know that this is another opportunity for them to grow the game, because when they do the Hexagram, they download the free PDF for Melee. Next thing you know, they're buying the Legacy box set. And yes, they will dive in like that. We do it at Columbia Games all the time. We've got like 9 of the hardbacks now, and every time we put it out there, people see we're not just a flash in the pan. We've got the main book and 8 other books now, and people just buy them all. So it's a beautiful marketing tool. Now the thing is, Hexagram is a little limited though, in the idea that it's all got to be official. So it's really a fine-tooth comb to make sure there's no rules out there that are house rules or whatnot. And if they do anything new, it's really with a small leash. And it makes sense for a number of reasons. One, if it works, don't mess with it. The game is great right now as it is. 2, it could change the flavor of the game, which I'm going to go over here because there's something I really like in this Heroic Expeditions that I would definitely be using. But at the same time, I'll go over it, but it's something I wouldn't want in the main rules. And 3, sometimes game rules get so popular as an optional rule that they become unofficially official. And that's a problem in some cases. Like, I'll use an example. Silent Death is one of my favorite spaceship combat games. I just did a video on it a few weeks ago. One of my best videos, actually. Not a surprise. It's one of the greatest games. But the thing is, the ships were it was such a great tactical game and fast that you could play lots more ships, and people started to, right? People were used to playing Warhammer 40K on 4x6 tables, and you want to fill that out with all these ships and have this massive battle. You could. So people started making rules that are a little bit more shooty, if you will. They allowed more shots. They allowed torpedoes to move quicker. Basically to just make things blow up easier, even easier, so you get them off the field, and it just makes things a little bit more smoother. However, as you can imagine, doing so, it became more popular, but they do take away for some of the really good tactical gameplay that was in there when you were just playing 16 ships or less. So you don't want that. You don't want to lose that ever. Plus, you could also make the game a little bit more complicated, for new people. As much as the rules, each individual one by themselves may be good, if you get enough of them, then you get that rules creep in there, and all of a sudden you got this big monstrosity of a game. So we're going to go over that with you. But just to remind you guys, we do have GM's Day sales going on right now at Drive-Thru RPG. This is the biggest sale of the year for them. They do sales all the time, maybe for 25% off. Now, Harn World titles are up to 40% off on Drive-Thru RPG. Go there now, use the link down below, and grab you some Harn World. It's great for the fantasy trip, no doubt. And of course, now we got Pigskin coming up. Link will be down below. Drawn by my brother, Christopher Eiser. It's my rendition of Tom Dalglish's cult classic game for Columbia Games, Slapshot. And finally, Julius Caesar from Columbia Games has been chosen to be in the World Series of Board Game Championships down in Las Vegas. Grant Dalglish and Justin Thompson, the designer, will be down in Vegas to play against you. Or if you just want to go up to Grant Dalglish and talk a little Harn, I'm sure he's not going to be offended. So anyway, let's go to the Heroic Expeditions and just check this out, see what we're looking at. Beautiful artwork, by the way. So this looks like an 8.5 by 5 by 5 digest form, which is great. It's only $8, $2.50. if you buy it on PDF, which is available also on Drive-Thru RPG. Procedure house rules here. The best one that I've seen that I liked is the shielding the side hex. If you have shield expertise, you also get the bonus to your side hexes. Pretty nice. I kind of liked it enough. I kind of, if there's enough bonuses, I would like to see shield expertise too. That would be nice, because anything to make the fighters seem a little bit different and differentiate themselves, I'm always a fan of. Now, if there was a prize that goes to the best article, and let's start here, it's Rites and Rituals by Donovan Beard. We all know that TFT doesn't have healing spells, mainly because of the way the magic works. It would be too easy to exploit. You just cast healing spells, you rest for 15, 30 minutes or so, then you cast it again, and just keep on going until everybody was healed up. It's a little bit too much. Here, Rites and Rituals is something also, by the way, for priests and theologians to do. So you have to be a priest or theologian, which gives them something to do other than to be just a statistic for getting a bonus to a reaction roll, which is or other limited things, right? The idea behind Rites and Rituals is, one, you can cast this and you can cast it on a whole group, or in the case of a ceremony, as opposed to a ritual, even larger group. But when you cast this spell, it can only be done during one of 3 times during the day, either at dawn, high noon, or moonrise. It's pretty much Donovan's equivalent to casting a spell 1 time per day, but even more limited, because it has to be a certain thing. It can be adjusted to whatever you want, but generally at dawn, high noon, or moonrise. And limited even more if you have to actually see the moon or see the dawn. That might be interesting too. But the basic thing is, these spells are all the spells you would think that clerics would do. So basically, Rituals of Restoration basically changes all the hits that you've encountered during the day, changes them into fatigue. So you just rest up, and all of a sudden you probably are ready to go. But that one might be required to be a little bit more limited, or you can just make it even, like I said, limited to if you see the sun or the moon or something like that, because that seems pretty strong. But then again, you can always just say, hey, 3 of your hits are healed and changed into fatigue, forcing you to rest a little bit, but then you can move on with the party. Or Ritual of Resistance, which gives everybody a +1 armor bonus for 1d6 hours, and etc., etc., etc. But it is just a beautiful idea that came out of necessity for somebody who I can only imagine wanted to play some D&D modules, but TFT doesn't lend itself well to deep dives into dungeons. Not even the Keep on the Borderlands would be very friendly for TFT. You're constantly having to either get in, get out of there, bring a lot of potions, which is expensive, or, my favorite, just have a lot of hirelings or have a big group go in and just kind of swap in and out and stuff like that, which I like because you can kill characters a lot easier too when everybody's playing more than one, But it also feels like you're playing with a small army going in somewhere. But this one definitely takes the cake. Alright, so we got a few extra creatures, which I thought were all written by the same person at first because not credited up at top, but the main also reason was it seemed like there was a winter themed going on here, while later on there's a winter themed, John Lysing gives a winter themed wizard in here, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But no, these are all by different people. So we got the Frost Gnome by Casimir Leiber. I hope he comes up with more stuff, so I definitely like that a lot. And that actually could have gone into Joe Tippett's campaign. So beautifully placed. I like that even more now. I just thought of that. Oh, it's a gnome. Crying out loud. Fits right in with the wee folk. Starts out with strength 5 to 10. Beautiful. A froth worm. Another creature that could fit right into that campaign as a threat. So basically it's a froth worm, not frost worm. Now this might be a bit much for them. If you want to talk about the big bad of the sea in a campaign made of halflings, this might be a bit much, but it would fit. And that is a giant subterranean spider. Now I want to go back to the picture here because of 2 things. One, the good thing about PDFs is you can change them. Guys, get the person who drew this name on this page. They definitely deserve credit. It's a beautiful picture. Now, I'm partial to black and white artwork or two-toned artwork because that's D&D to me, and it's the way my brother draws. He can do color too, but he really shines when it's black and white. And I can tell you the contrast is what's beautiful about this picture because, I mean, you can tell that he said, okay, you know what? The very far back can be just all white if I wanted to, but if I just made it one shade of gray, then those eyes will pop. I swear, the Energizer Bunny is behind each of those eyes, just pounding away. I mean, they just glows. It's just an awesome picture. I love it. And so the stats for the giant subterranean spiders made by John Lysing. Tim Myers made the Grave Cave Spider. The Winter Wolf made by John Lysing. A little bit more powerful than your basic dire wolf, I think. Definitely more powerful than the regular wolf. But he's got an Arctic aura, which does one thing that I like, is makes people give a strength check or they take damage. I love that. Anything that makes somebody give a strength check in this game, just because I want strength to mean something a little bit more so we can get away from the whole idea that it's a dumb stat. Punish those people who ignore it at their own peril. Now, Tim Ayers has a really creative article here. Now, I have to ask, was he influenced because he suffered from food poisoning recently when he made this? Or, did he eat bad food at his mother-in-law's? Or is he just sick in the head? I'm not sure, but this is freaking brilliant. Taking something as simple as a meal spell, an accessory spell, and turning it into a complete plot line. Oh, this is just beautiful. So the thing is about a meal spell, as we all know, is just to substitute a meal when you don't have one on the road. Simple enough. Okay? But what if you have them on a consistent basis? Now, if it's your meal spell, well, you're used to your own cooking, I guess. It doesn't affect you. It's your own magical essence going back into your body. Fine enough. But what if somebody else were to eat it on a consistent basis of a week? Or even a month? What would happen? Well, according to Tim, it makes you into this Mana-Ghoul. So basically, you just become addicted to eating magical energy. Now, there could be two implications of this, which is really cool. One, is it a way to enslave somebody? Because, if not only are they, addicted to eating mana-type food, they lose their entire taste buds to normal food after a while. They don't crave that anymore. They crave magical stuff. But maybe they specifically want that wizard, as if, hey, the restaurant of Thayer the magician, It's like, I need that food. I'm addicted to the In-N-Out burger or Cookout in North Carolina or Texas barbecue. I got to have that brisket, something like that. What an awesome idea. You're definitely going to want to read up on that. And folks, I totally underestimated this about Tim's work here because I just thought it was a few extra paragraphs about what happens when you become a Mana-Ghoul, and I read up on that. I guess I just, I was going through the whole thing and just kind of leafing through it. There's a page and a half of things that happen because you're a Mana-Ghoul. I mean, everything to what happens when you see a wizard, what happens when you see a non-spellcaster, but they have a magic item. I mean, all kinds of things. And then there's a page and a half of a small subsetting of where some Mana-Ghouls may live in your campaign. It's absolutely huge, and it's absolutely beautiful, and you absolutely are going to enjoy reading it. Now, if you've listened to my channel from time to time, you know that I'm a fan of the Dune series from Frank Herbert. I've read 95% of his books and the new stuff. Isaac Asimov's Foundation and Robot series and his Lucky Star series, which really started me off. And then even maybe some one-offs from Alan Dean Foster or Orson Scott Card. You might get the impression that I really like books a lot. Actually, I don't read them much. It's just that when I go down a rabbit hole, I tend to go all the way. Generally, books, unless they're written very well, don't capture my attention for long, and they sit on the shelf. I always want to try something new every so often, but then I'll get into something, and it's usually a game that will pull me away from continuing to read. But what I like about Hexagram and Heroic Journeys Heroic Expedition, is give me a reason to read these small little articles. And this is episode 1, Temple of the Jade Demon by David Powell's Powell's, I believe. I'm looking forward to it. I will be reading it. And what I really like is the idea is episode 1 now. Hopefully, he's already written episode 2, 3, and maybe even made an end to this, which is the bane for most of these readers. One of the things that happened with Harn World is they had I forget the name of it, of the fragment. Some guy, was really being ambitious, and I respect the ambition of making a trilogy, okay? And the thing is about wanting to make a trilogy is you got to finish the trilogy, and everybody wants to do it. Like I said, I can respect it, but even Star Wars was written with the first one in mind. Yeah, some notes for if it continued, but really it was written as a one-off shot, because if it didn't work, it didn't matter. It ended, So there's that to contend with. I'm a big fan, like my Kickstarters, I always tried to make the game like 95% done, or maybe 85% done, before I ever get that going into works, because I don't want to disappoint people. So I'm hoping that, Dave, you got the motivation, if you haven't finished it yet, to keep on writing, please. Because I want to see it come to fruition. There's no doubt about it. And I want more heroic expeditions. Go figure, in the middle of this video, my brother calls me up, and my brother Christopher Isert, and he says, "Hey, Jim, guess what came in the mail?" Bam! Fantasy Trip Bestiary. So I got it in, the counters, the cards, the whole 9 yards, whole shebang. So expect a video on this very soon. I've already cracked it open, but I'll be going over, making a video of this probably right after this, quite honestly, while it's fresh. After all, I do already have my Fantasy Trip shirt on, so why not? So expect a video for the Fantasy Trip Bestiary right after this video. So we have IQ and XP Advancement by Niles Lindberg. Basically extra ideas for going up in levels and such. One of them is IQ increases, gives you a talent point at the same time. Now, the thing is, it's a little limited. The idea is your IQ actually stays the same. There's a new stat that will be derived from that called MIQ, which is memory points, which allows you to learn tougher spells and talents, but your base IQ stays the same, so your perception rolls will stay the same, for instance. So it just goes off to say, hey, this allows you to show that you've studied more, or you really made some concentration to get something without really saying that you're now a super genius. So that can happen. I like that one. Another one is giving up an attribute point. Instead of gaining an attribute point, you gain staff mana. They have an adjusted XP table. Didn't read the reasons why just yet. But that's there as well. And of course, they go through studying and training, saying, here's some ideas to explain how your characters all of a sudden got skills that should take more time, than just, you can justify going up in swords, expertise just because you've been adventuring, but something like being a scholar would take some more explaining away of what you're doing in your spare time. Now, here we get to meet the party, because this is all the writers, and for the most part, it's the usual suspects. But there are a few new people that definitely deserve some how-do-you-dos and pats on the backs. The first one, I think, is Donovan Beard. I think he is a newbie. I don't think I've seen him in Hexagram. I don't recall. I might be wrong. But he is definitely the pat on the back guy for this episode, for this book of heroic expeditions. I am so glad that what he wrote in here is in here. I've seen it online, I believe, and having it in a book form is really nice. I'll get into that in a little bit. John Lysing, of course, is the guy that's responsible for this whole endeavor, so thanks to John for that. Niles Lindberg and Tim Myers, of course, they've been here. They are the usual suspects I was talking about. You've definitely seen their stuff in Hexagram. Dave Powell's is another, if I've said that correctly, I hope, is one that intrigues me because he's written for White Dwarf and War Games Illustrated magazine. That's a great combo for the Fantasy Trip. Fits right in there. Wargaming and role-playing with that kind of feel, I look forward to seeing his stuff in there. And he's also the co-creator, I want to make sure I mentioned it, Free Mars graphic novels. All right. and he's a paleontologist. And he lives with his family in Arakeen. I don't know if that about that one. Maybe that makes me wonder about, he's Imperial Paleontologist. I just seen Planetologist and I want to give him credit for it. I just wanted to give him credit for his career. And I didn't. It just went right over my bald head. It's aerodynamic. I'm sorry, guys. I totally fell for that one for a second. Okay, fine. Anthony Shozak, we all know Anthony. He's definitely been in Hexagram a few times. And he's got a great blog. It is filled. You guys got to go see it. I'm totally going to screw it up because I've always said the words in my head. It's musings from Maria Ngia. Okay, I said it kind of correctly there, I think. But it's a great blog. Go in there, a lot of information. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of his stuff gets transferred into this one. Much like Donovan's stuff that he wrote is... I've seen it on the net, and it's getting transferred here, and I hope that's what's happening with Anthony's stuff here. Joe Tipp is, of course, another guy that's always over, as they say here, the pulse of TFT. You see him all over the internet, and I think he's written for, he definitely has written for Hexagram a few times. So, all good stuff coming up here. Let's take a look at more of it. Now, this is nice. There's two ads in here that are just hilarious. Because these were from the old comics. You've seen them before. They've actually spoofed them a number of times. But the idea that it really works for TFT here because of the idea that, to get wizards stronger, they also had to be really buff and strong. And all of a sudden they can lift, through bench press 250 pounds or something like that. As they just get stronger. And it goes off on that. So you get this 98-pound weakling, gets a book, learns how to become a mage, and now all of a sudden he's not just casting spells, he's just taking care of business by punching guys out. Pretty cool. Okay, so Frost and Fangs is an adventure by John Lysing. Of course, the guy that's in charge of this whole thing. But basically, it's a nice little quick quest. And the thing is about this, another good thing about the heroic expeditions is these are all going to be, if he does any more quick quests, which I assume he will, the quick quests are nice, but you are limited to those 6 pages. And he's probably going to get some, it's a challenge to do. You're either underwriting or overwriting just by a little bit. I can see that being a big problem. I just did Operation Meteor from David Pulver, and man, I'm trying to keep it into 4 pages, and I succeeded. It wasn't that bad, but man, there was a point where I was like, man, what do I cut here? I had to actually cut his designer notes, which was a good thing because it has some spoilers to the game actually, and it's a solitaire game. You don't want hints on how to play. You want to, or strategies. You want to figure it out yourself. So it wasn't that bad of a cut, but I could definitely see some people being like, "Oh, I wrote this cool adventure, and what do I cut? What do I do?" Here, he's got 32 pages. People got 32 pages to work with, and that way their adventures won't hit the cutting room floor. So anything that won't make it through quick quests can show up here, while the smaller ones could probably show up in the hexagram. So Joe Tippett has 2 articles in here. One of them is 3 new PC race options for the fantasy trip. Now, he's been playing for 40 years, so I think these happened early on in his 40 years of gaming, where he wants to really take away the influence of Lord of the Rings from his campaigns, because Dungeons & Dragons definitely was based off that. And even then, when they said, okay, we'll cut ties with the Lord of the Rings so we can't get sued or whatever, the influence was still there because it was too popular, right? So halflings were still hobbits, right? And orcs were generally still creations of wizards, without any personality, just pillaging the pillage. And that came late. Their personalities and societal structure maybe came later on. But Joe definitely went out here. Now, what I like what he did with his version of orcs, and these aren't all orcs and basic halflings here. These are all a little bit different. But orcs is the closest thing to something standard. But what he did here, he went with the pig-faced, or I should say boar-like orcs here, but he made them weaker than normal humans. Not the same like in TFT. In TFT, they're interchangeable from humans. They just say they're more quarrelsome and aggressive. All right, fine. But in standard Dungeons and Dragons, they're actually a little bit stronger than humans, right? So they be their own thing. But these orcs are actually weaker, and I think that comes down to, I think Joe likes demi-human adventures, and we'll get that in a little bit, because when we look at the next page, we can see the gillies, and these have a little bit of a dark crystal influence here, I think. Definitely weaker in strength, but here's where I definitely think that Joe has an idea of having a halfling campaign, is because here's the weapons of the wee folk. And so these are weapons from strength 6 on up to 9. And I bet you 10 to 1 this makes Henry Cobb one of the aficionados of the fantasy trip, which you'll see all over the internet, and Quick Quest and Hexagram. Oh, he's probably just loving this. Just the idea of, because he loves goblins. You know, you see him make an example of every character as a goblin. Just beautiful. So basically you can have a campaign with nothing but wee folk, halflings, and such. And as you can see here by the Goji, which is his version of gargoyles. Okay, so it's the same. It's got a lot to do with gargoyles, but they're smaller. They're halfling sized, and the good thing is, this makes it so it can show you that halflings can exist outside of the forest. Basically, you know, you got the most you ever get outside of forest dwelling halflings is, or demi-humans, is mainly dwarves, maybe gnomes and such. But the Goji can be out there too. So, but I can definitely see that. I think Joe Tippett has his own idea of a world setting, or at least a subsection of the world, where, you know, the orcs might be the main bad guy, but they're not so overpowering like they would be if they were the Dungeons & Dragons orcs. So they're a threat, but not so much. They can be played as characters. And, you know, the thing about, I have always wanted to play a campaign of halflings and halfling level threats, because playing against wolves are totally different. An owl might be their version of defeating a dragon and whatnot, and I've always wanted to play that, but the only reason I haven't done that is because I haven't found a campaign that would actually, or a world setting that doesn't feel too much based on fairies. You know, it's always been too lighthearted and foresty. You know, I want something my typical Dungeons & Dragons fantasy trip dark, you know, so maybe I'll find some. Maybe you already know of some. It's a big world, and I just maybe haven't seen it. And Joe Tippett graces us with his second article. This one's giving us just a few spells, but they're really cool. Cinematic in nature in some parts. My favorite is Retrieve Item, and it's that one you've seen before. Some guy... some adventurer swipes something from some other character, and he says, I got the thing. He looks at his hand. It's not there. It's in the wizard's hand, looking back at him like, ha, ha, ha. You know, that's just cool to have as an official spell. I think that should be definitely there. And another one, which is really cool, is the Inflame Weapon. Not just because it gives flame or gives extra damage, but because it makes a normal weapon magical for 12 turns, which is really nice if you're caught as a party flat-footed, especially at early levels when characters can't seem to do anything against a creature that's not affected by magical items, and it gives that wizard that does have that spell just that little bit of more importance in that scenario. But either way, there's a lot of other cool spells here, and I think you'll enjoy them. One of the things that I do like about Fantasy Trip is the idea that there is only one dominant element in the game when it comes to spells, and that is fire. It's the most usable, wall of fire, fireball, create a fire, all that stuff. In general, I like it because it does make it special. So if you have if a monster's resisting a lot of a wizard's spells, it only needs one resistance, right? You don't have to pick throughout a myriad of 4 different ones, which makes them all weaker after it's all said and done, right? Both the attack and the defense. So it's less to contend with. However, there is that desire to have the opposite of fire, which is ice, at the very least. Why? Because, maybe because it just makes sense, fire and ice. It's the opposite. You can have wizards. It just makes sense in a lot of ways, storyline or whatever. And then you got, speaking of storylines, the cool animated flick from the 1980s, fantasy-based Fire and Ice. The Fire Kingdom against the Ice Kingdom. Who wouldn't want that to some small degree? So John Lyson gives his 2 cents of how to make things a little bit different, both cosmetically, if not totally different, than just your standard spells, rather than just being, it's the same spell but opposite. Which he goes on to talk about a few things, but then he talks about his Entomb spell, which is a different version of Freeze altogether. Basically, unlike Freeze, the target can neither hear nor see, but they are also encapsulated in a protective shell, which stops 3 hits an attack and takes 10 to get through, which is another way to get through it, as opposed to Freeze, which I think you can shake somebody up on that one, but this one you actually got to cut through, and then it'll all shatter and they will be free. So those are pretty cool. And Sculpt Snow. So hopefully maybe there's even more. I hope some people come up with more, because if you're going to have the opposite, I would love to see little takes on it and just go full out. Let's make the Blizzard a little bit different than the Fireball some small way, and maybe give an advantage in some small way, not big ways. I understand the idea of making things balanced and stuff as much as feasibly possible. But then again, I'm an old school war gamer too, and the ice may just fall where they may, or the dice may just fall where they may. The ice may fall where they may. So I would like to see more variations of that maybe in upcoming issues. And Anthony Shostak finishes it off with a nice little scenario called Sisters in Arms, which really showcases his rules for fear factor and morale that he has in hexagram number 8, even though if you don't have hexagram number 8, one, you can buy it for a PDF along with this book for only $5, or you could just go to his website, the link will be down below, where you can pick up the rules there. The idea is, it's by itself, it seems like a rather typical assassin scenario, where a diplomatic mission's in the middle. They got surrounded by a couple assassins, as you can see. They surround themselves at location A. The Palanquin is in the middle, and it's surrounded by 6 servants and 4 guards. Okay, and so they're going to have at it, but generally the idea is, if you don't play with the fear factor rules, you can. And the servants flee if they fail a 3 IQ roll anytime a guard is hit, and they start fleeing and try to run away. Or the better probably way to play is add some nuance by the guards and the servants having a fear factor of 14 and reducing it by 1 every time a guard is killed. Or the assassins start with a fear factor of 18, and they reduce it by 1 every time one of them is incapacitated or taken out of action. All right, so obviously this could go in a lot of different ways. You can make up the story as you go. Are the assassins only after the main leader? Are they going after that? Or are they going after a terror attack, also wanting to kill as many of the servants as possible? Make the victory conditions what you will. That there's a lot of ways that you can do this and get the characters involved, because the characters for the year-in-year campaign could be the guards, or even one of the servants for what matter, or just the assassins. Who knows? But this little scenario is definitely going to be replayable. And not that you're going to have a shortage of counters if you order the Bestiary anytime soon, because that thing is absolutely packed. But here's some more. This is to the Adventure of Frost and Fangs. That was earlier in this book. So that is pretty much, that's the entire book. There's a lot here, guys. Almost rivaling Hexagram. Well, it is 32 pages long, just like Hexagram. So it's definitely rivaling it in content and cool stuff. So for $2.50, you can't go wrong. Grab Heroic Expeditions, and I'll see you all for the Bestiary video coming up next.